On that day that we married, we made a commitment that we never say yours, mine, they're our kids. Then I had to help them with their homework. We didn't even own a Bible. I don't know who got the better education, the kids or me. I sat with many as they took their last breath on this earth. It's a powerful moment because at that instant, they know something that I don't know.
You're listening to Wonderful Life with Tom Rohr. From Rogers to Bedford Falls, from Fayetteville to Pottersville, we're discovering how one person's life can have an effect on so many others. My guest today is Will Hanna. Will runs a ranch that was established to provide pasture-raised heritage pork and lamb to family and friends. His animals live the way God intended. Welcome, Will.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So our audience can get to know you a little bit better. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your family?
We, the family, are originally from Bakersfield, California. My wife and I were raised there. We lived there for the first 55 years of our life. Like every other town, they start small and then they grow. And in the early days, I was born in 1950, so I got to live through the really, what I see as the good years, the 50s, the 60s, and so on. My wife and I went to high school together. She was actually my sister's best friend during those years. And
so your family's from Bakersfield?
Originally, Waltina's family was from Salinas, California. She was born in Salinas, and they moved to Bakersfield when she was very young. And her father owned a wrecking yard. Those are auto parts and things like that. And so she grew up on a wrecking yard in Bakersfield. I was born in Bakersfield. I have a sister and mom and dad. And my father worked for the California Highway Patrol out there. My mom was a homemaker for most of the years. There was a time when she became a substitute teacher for the schools. I lived in the same house, Tom, for 32 years. Born and raised in that home. And then when I returned from the service in around 72 or 3, my parents were moving to Fresno, a town just north of Bakersfield. So I moved back into the home I was born and raised in, lived there for a number of more years after that.
Okay. So California was really home to you.
You bet. It was home. It was, our families were there. You know, Bakersfield, the San Joaquin Valley is primarily oil and agriculture, and I think it remains so to this day. It has grown tremendously. I haven't been back in many years. Waltina goes back. We have a daughter that still lives there. She and her husband are school teachers there, and Waltina has sisters there. So she goes back periodically. I just stay here and take care of the ranch, and we're both happy that way.
All right, so why don't you tell me a little bit about the early years in California?
We grew up in the 50s, and so we're talking about the Leave It to Beaver years, the Ward Bond and wagon train. Things were pretty wholesome. It was a good time. Those were the years. I had horses as a child, and into my teen years, they were replaced with cars when I got about 16. But prior to that, you could leave in the morning on your horse, and a friend and I we would ride together. You'd be gone all day. As a kid, you had to be home by dinner. Obviously, there were no cell phones or anything. But everybody kept an eye out. If an adult told you to do something, you did it. The last thing that I wanted to hear was, I know your parents, and because everybody supported everybody in those years. And many neighborhoods I know are still that way. But it was a safe environment. I was heavily involved in 4-H. My sister and I both. We lived on an acre. We had 1 acre. We would raise a steer for the fair or lamb for the fair. So we got really involved in 4-H, and my sister and I both were in it for many years. I learned a lot in that program from the things that they want you to learn, record keeping. And my dad was a woodworker. That was his hobby. And we had a little wood shop at our home. He made some beautiful pieces. And in 4-H, I did a lot of woodworking and along with the livestock. So it was just a really wonderful time. I had a very blessed childhood. We were not churchgoers at that time. It was something that just never came up. We just went about our business. We maintained just a moral and wholesome life. Mm-hmm. Obviously, years later, I learned that there's more to life than just living an honest and moral life. There's more to it. And in my 30s, I was probably 34 before I recognized that there was, again, more to life than that, and started investigating what was out there. I had that urge, and so I became involved in a church. Been involved ever since.
Okay. So now, growing up, did you work with your father in the woodworking shop?
Oh, absolutely. He was very patient.
Well, fathers tend to be that way.
If you're lucky, if you're blessed, they're patient. And my dad was a very patient man.
Yeah. So what kind of woodworking did he do?
Cabinetry.
Okay.
He built a lot of cabinetry. Our home was full of it. He would build it for friends. And in those days, of course, TVs weren't what they are today. You didn't walk out of the store with one under your arm. And he would build TV stands and record. We did a lot of records were playing in our home. And so he built a record. I'll call him an armoire for lack of a better term, but that's where the record player would sit. So he was very methodical, very meticulous. Cabinet making was right up his alley, and it was an escape for him too. Working in law enforcement was as challenging then as it is now. Dad ultimately, over the years, worked his way up in the Highway Patrol. When we were young, my sister and I, Highway Patrol is a state organization, and he did not promote during our years while we were home because he knew that would mean a move, and he didn't want to do that. But in 1969, I went in the service. I graduated from high school in 68. This is my 50th high school reunion coming up.
Oh, wow.
I will not attend, but it's happening, and I get the emails and to see who's doing what, and it is interesting.
How big a class did you have?
I'd have no idea, Tom. I went to 4 years of high school, and I went and I came home. I wasn't involved in extracurricular activities at all. I came home and we did chores. I had a great life. I did not do athletics. I wasn't in the debate club. Yeah. I didn't do those things for no good reason. I just didn't have an interest, and my parents didn't insist that I do those things. So that way I got to stay more involved with 4-H. Did a lot with that. But more importantly, I was just wanted to get home, and I enjoyed being home. So the people now that there's a website for our 50th, and you look at the pictures, and I knew who they were, but I didn't really, I probably had 6 friends and that you actually did things with. And that's just, I read some of the things these people post, and I guess I missed out on some things because they talk about all these activities, but I like the way my life went.
Yeah.
I'm very pleased.
Okay, so you were in the service.
I was, and I graduated again in 1968. In 1969, I was not a good student. I was an average student. When I graduated, I began attending the local junior college. It didn't grab me. Took the classes, the prerequisites for everything, and it was fine, but I was not a stellar student. Every chance I got, I'd go home and fuss with the livestock or whatever. One day, I thought, well, the Vietnam War was going on, and I had friends that had gone. One day, I decide on my way home from the junior college, on that path, there was the Navy recruiter's office, and I swung in. And, it's like walking into a car dealership. They, hey, good to see you. And so we visited. That was on Thursday. The reason I remember that Thursday evening, we always had dinner at the dining room table. We ate dinner together, the family, the 4 of us. It was just what we did. I thought everybody did that. I mentioned to my folks that I'd stop by and seen the Navy recruiter. And again, my dad was a very patient man. And he said, well, what do you think? And I noticed my mom had stopped eating because the war was, you saw it on the news, and nobody wants their children really to be involved in that. And I understand, but you get that burning desire. You're 18, you're not doing anything else, and you're looking for some excitement, I think.
Did they still have the draft?
They did. They did. And at that point, and so I received my draft card when I was in boot camp.
Okay.
My parents forwarded it to me. My number was 8. And so I was going. So at dinner, I mentioned it, and I intentionally didn't make eye contact with my mother. But Dad said, so, well, what do you think? And I said, well, I'm not really doing much in school. And he said, so do you think this is something you want to do? And I said, yeah. And I think I made a commitment to him today. And he said, oh, really? And I could feel my mother staring at me. And so Dad asked the question. He goes, so how far along are you in the process? And again, this is Thursday evening. And I said, well, I think I leave Monday. And,
wow.
And my mom, she cried, left the table. Sure enough, Monday morning, I was on a bus and heading to Los Angeles along with, other guys at that point, and there weren't a lot of women in, and went down, and it was the military, like everything, has changed a great deal. But in the 60s, you went down and you had your big physical, and everybody walked around with no clothes on, and they like to yell at you, and off you go. And I was in the Navy for 4 years in the typical duty that they do. You have 2 years of shore duty and 2 years of sea duty. I spent 2 years on an aircraft carrier, the USS Ranger. We were deployed there in Vietnam, and we floated around in the Tonkin Gulf, and I worked on the carrier, and we loaded bombs and did all the things and worked on the flight deck, and very exciting times, and I enjoyed it. And then I had 2 years of shore duty. That was in Imperial Beach, California. I actually had that before I went to sea, and so I got to spend some time on in state before I left for a couple of years.
How far was that from home?
That was, and I drove it many times. It was 4.5 hours. I had a Volkswagen, and by golly, I was heading back to Bakersfield every chance I got. But then ultimately, your sea duty time starts. I got sent to the Ranger and spent 2 years on it. So exciting times. And I have fond memories of it. I did not dislike it at all. Mm-hmm. It was.
So how did that change you as a person?
I think one way is that it opened my eyes not just to the world, because you really don't see much of the world. You see an aircraft carrier, we would come into the Philippines periodically every 60 days or so. Every couple of months, we would come out and come into port. So you get to see a little bit of the world. But more importantly for me is I got to, there were 5,000 men on the ship. I met people from all over the United States. And I learned that not everyone lived the kind of life that I lived. That was my first real exposure to others who had very different values than I did. We were all there, and we were all doing what we did. But people from Detroit and these big cities, inner cities. So it was quite an eye opener as you learned how they lived their lives. And our life was not, it was not picture perfect family. It's a family and full. My mom was an alcoholic, and those things went on in the old days. And people pretty much. Nowadays, we're more open about that. If we have an addiction today, I can tell you that, and there's no shame in it, and we can get help, and we can do all these things. In those years, you didn't talk about it, but every family has idiosyncrasies,
sure.
And ours was certainly no different. But it was certainly a wonderful childhood. I knew it then, and I obviously know it now.
Okay. So you get through the service,
mm-hmm.
and you come back home.
I came back home, and my mom and dad were in the process of moving to Fresno,
okay.
Just north of Bakersfield, a couple of hours. And so I moved back into the house I basically born and raised in. I hadn't been out very long when what I did in the Navy, for the last couple of years, because of the chief of naval operations had made a little edict, and I was able to grow a beard. Now, beards are very common now, but in those days, under certain circumstances, depending what you did, what your function was on the ship, you could grow a beard, and I did. And so I got out. During that short time that I was going to the junior college, I also drove school bus for the Kern High School District, a 79-passenger Crown school bus. I started driving school bus the day after I turned 18. You had to be 18 to have a school bus driver's license. And so I was driving kids to school. I had no business doing this, but you're 18, you're driving 79 kids around, picking them up and taking them to school, and you're a kid yourself. So then I went in the service. When I returned, I went back to the bus barns and said, hey, I'm back. And they were excited I was back. It'd been 4 years. And I said, any possibility? I do now intend. I learned the value of school over those 4 years. And so I said, I'm going to go back to the local junior college. And by then there was a 4-year college there. But they said, we'd love to have you back. Can you start next week kind of deal? And I said, you bet. And so at the end, I remember we stood up and shook hands. The gentleman said, no, you go home this weekend and shave, and I'll see you Monday. They had a no beard policy, no facial hair,
Okay.
It never dawned on me to be upset or offended. I'd had that beard for 2 years. It was awesome. I went home, cut it off, and went to work on Monday. And we don't see that a lot nowadays. Nowadays, we're more inclined to go, no, wait a minute. This is my face, not yours. But back then, you want a job, and the requirement was you shave. And I was glad to have it. And so I started driving school bus again and attending the local junior college. I did not graduated from high school in '68. I got a college degree in 2001. Yeah, I'm kind of slow. But ultimately, I did, and it was much harder as an older person.
I heard somebody recently say that that's a non-traditional education.
Is that what that is?
Yes.
Well, by God, I fall right in that category. It was a non-traditional education. But I became a fireman. They were giving a test for the county fire department, the Kern County Fire Department. On the aircraft carrier, I worked the crash rescue vehicles for a while. So I thought I knew everything I needed to know. And I took the test. And 1,500 people took the test in that year. That was in 1974. I got hired. I did well. I came out. I was number 7 on that list out of all those people. So I was blessed, and I got hired. I spent the next almost 30 years working for the Kern County Fire Department. I retired as a captain from the department. It's a large department. It's 43 fire stations, 600 personnel on the floor. I mean, it's the West, and the fire service there is different than here. Between wildland fires and things actually burn, and so it was actually a very short. I was there for 28 years, and they hired me back as a civilian when I retired. So I worked a little bit more because of some skills that I had that they needed. So it worked out really well. So those years as a firefighter, we were firemen then. We rode on the tailboard, and when I started in 1975. There's an academy you go to, and you get out and you're assigned a duty station. And I vividly remember, we slept in a big room with twin beds, and the old guys would lay in bed and read and smoke. Of course, those days are long gone. So are they. But they'd lay there and smoke a cigarette and read their book and wait for the alarm to go off. We worked 48 hours on and 48 hours off. So you were there for 2 days. Okay. And so you got to know your crew very, very well. And but a lot of wonderful experiences. And between coming back from Vietnam and seeing some of the things you see there, and then going into the fire service, where you see other tragedies, basically, whether it's a fire, whether it's a vehicle accident. And so over all those years, you see that life is fragile. Life is not what we might call fair. I saw some very good people lose their lives in these fires, just like I did when I was in the service. And you slowly start to piece things together. Why them and not me? It was an excellent profession. It's a career. I benefited greatly from my many years there in the fire service. Ultimately, Now let's talk about children. We've got 4 kids.
Well, now, and so when did you get married in this?
Well,
mix?
This is where my life gets really interesting. I have been married 3 times.
Okay.
I was married while in the service, had two children, 2 boys. That marriage ended in sometime in the 70s, so long ago, I forget. And I remarried. That one didn't last quite as long. And that's when you really start looking at your life, and and we had a daughter, and you start looking at your life and you go, well, what in the world am I doing wrong here? I'm a nice guy, I work hard, but there's more to it than that, as it turns out. And so slowly, the Lord just starts, kind of working on you. I had no bad habits necessarily. I mean, I wasn't a carouser. I didn't drink too much. I didn't run around. And I focused on the family. Yet the marriages failed. I know now they failed primarily because they were based on some worldly perceptions that I had. Okay, we'll get married. Off we go. Now, Waltina and I, tomorrow is our anniversary, 32 years. And when you get married for the right reasons, it's very successful. It's just as much work, if not more, but the rewards are great. And now 32 years into this thing, we have a wonderful life, have for 32 years. And we've worked very hard at it because we're both on the same page. Everything, we understand that this is all a gift from God. We're here. Everything's just loaned to us for our time here. And it's our responsibility to share, to make the most of it. And so, like I say, we both understand that and have understood it from day one. A divorce would not be something we would ever consider. I think Mom's probably considered homicide, but not divorce. And so we have created, through the grace of God, a marriage that is successful, that is, we believe, an example, certainly to our children. And I was concerned about that, kind of getting off to a rocky start there in that with some past marriages. I was concerned that, great, good example. Well, what are you doing? But my children have all wonderful marriages. Life has struggles.
You and Waltina have children also?
We do not. Waltina had 1 son, Mike. Okay. And so we put this family together. We were a little idealistic at the beginning. I had 3 children, and she had our son Mike, and we thought, okay, well, everybody will get along, and it'll be great. And I had to redefine getting along. They're kids, and all of a sudden, my children, on that day that we married, we made a commitment that these are not. We never say yours, mine. They're our kids. Okay. And I'm blessed with a wife that is very respectful and gets along very well with my former wives. My first wife and her husband come out and see us here. And life's too short for the drama.
Okay.
We both agreed to that. And she's very gracious about that. And that helped, I'm sure, the children. There was no conflict that we know a lot of families do experience with past marriages and things. I am not proud of those years. Not that I did anything necessarily, I did plenty of things wrong, but just the fact that you let them in. Those were the years when you just, okay, this isn't working. I guess we're going to pull the plug.
Yeah.
Instead of fixing things. So it
sounds like somewhere along the line you figured it out.
I did. In the 80s, what happened? I had custody of the kids, and joint custody. And so the kids were with me a lot. I got this wild idea that my kids need to go to a Christian school. I didn't really even know what that meant. And so there was one in Bakersfield. I was set with them, and they were not thrilled with me, a single man with 3 children, and I didn't kind of fall into the little niche that they liked. But again, the Lord's in control of that, and we were accepted. So the kids started attending this Christian school, and then I had to help them with their homework. We didn't even own a Bible. And all of a sudden, we've got, biblical homework. I don't know who got the better education, the kids or me. Pretty soon, I'm helping them with their homework, and we've got the book of John. Who is John? And, what's his deal? And so we my children basically led me to the Lord, wanting to do the right thing by them, being involved then in a Christian school, which I thought would benefit my children, ultimately benefited me as a person, as a father, ultimately as a husband to Waltina. I won't say I'm a different man. Obviously, I am. People that knew me then and know me now say, well, you're just the same. Maybe I'm not. You're not looking closely, or...
Yeah, it sounds like you're fulfilled now.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It changed my life. And so now I have this vibrant relational marriage, and we have been through some very, very difficult times. Not between our son Mike passed away 2 years ago. Last week, it was 2 years, or this week on the 15th. And he was 39. And those are things that are very hard to overcome. Hard for us, mom and dad, but hard for his siblings as well. After 30 years, him being I call them siblings. Obviously, they're not siblings, but it's the family. And now he's gone. So we still struggle with that. I know my children do as well. And when you lose a child and you lose a brother, there's a lot of work that has to go on. Mom and I support each other. June 15th is always a jury day for us. But we know where he is. And so we try to stay above those emotions. We talk about the good times and knowing that we will see him again.
Yeah.
And he just kind of beat me to the finish line.
Yeah. And that was, I'm sure, unexpected.
Oh, yeah.
So, Will, today we're sitting at Hanna
Hanna Family Ranch.
Yes. How in the world did you move from this life in California to Arkansas and this ranch?
We had always raised the kids to get up, get out, be a part of the world, be involved. Our son Brian, our oldest, went to work for Tyson, got hired with Tyson and left Bakersfield and went to Oklahoma. It was a devastating thing. Sometimes you raise your kids to do certain things and then they do, and you go, what have I done? Where is he going?
Right.
Well, what's he thinking? And then, of course, there was a woman involved, his wife, who makes our family pretty cool.
Yeah.
But so she drew him away from us.
Was she from Oklahoma?
Yeah, and she had lived in Bakersfield, and they dated, and she went back, and then, but she and they have two children. They are just a wonderful example to me. Brian and I were very close. He was my oldest son, and we went through a lot of difficult times together. His brother Niall and our daughter Elizabeth, and we were very close knit. And then Brian decides that he's going to go to Oklahoma, and he does. Life goes on. And Mom and I would make trips to see them. And working for Tyson, he ran hog farms for him, actually. And he worked at several different ones, and one was here in Hiawassee. Ultimately, he was back in Oklahoma when Tyson got rid of that whole pork division. And all of a sudden, a man with two kids who lived in Tyson housing and worked for Tyson had 30 days. And you're going, oh. So Mom and I hot-footed back here. What's your plan? And he said, well, we always liked Bentonville. When we worked at the Hiawassee hog farm, and we'd like to go there. So we watched the kids for a long weekend there in Oklahoma. I think they were in Sasakwa at that time, and or one of those towns. So we stayed with the kids, and they made a drive and came over and decided that this was the place, and they found a place to rent and start a new life here. And they rebounded. I know it was difficult, but they rebounded very well. They're a very strong Christian couple, very strong Christian family. And God has a plan, and they believed that. They moved over here. He ultimately, in not too long, became a police officer for the city of Rogers and is a detective there today. Works for the Rogers Police Department. We would come back and visit, and his brother would come back and visit. And one day his brother, Niall, said, you guys ever thought about moving to Arkansas? We had never thought about that. But then that kind of plants the seed. We prayed about it, and my parents had passed away. My mom passed away, I think, in 1997, and my dad in 2003. And Waltina's folks were still alive. And so we start making this plan. We're going to the big thing that we would miss, since our family was moving around so much, obviously was our church family. But we decided there's probably a church in Bentonville, Arkansas. We put the house on the market, and then Waltina's mom fell ill. We moved her in with us. They were elderly. And when I retired from the fire service, finally, we went to work for a local hospice. And we worked at the hospice for 3 years. And so end-of-life care is important to us. Your life is ending on this earth. And so we had we spent a lot of time with patients and doing what they call respite visits. We would sit with the patient while the family members could get out of the house. It's pretty taxing when you have a loved one that is in the final stages of life. And so we would go and sit with the patient and get to know them while the family could get away for a while. We did that with a number of families, and I have spent. Death is something that it comes to us all. I've seen a lot of it, probably more than most, between the military and then the years in the fire service and then working at the hospice. But I view it differently now. It is inevitable. When you sit with someone who has 3 days to live, and you just let them talk.
Yeah, their priorities are
so
totally different.
So different. I had a man confess to me of an affair during World War II in France that his wife never knew about. You don't say anything. You just listen,
Wow.
And so it's a very poignant time. And I think God put us in that line of work at that time just to be with these people. Some knew the Lord, some did not. Yeah. Many did not.
So what was your connection with the hospice?
Well, we're volunteers. We have this volunteer mentality. Okay. And we started volunteering at a hospice. A friend of mine in the fire service was a hospice volunteer. And he goes, "Hey, you'd be good at this." I go, "No, you're out of your head. Why would I want to go sit with, people circling the drain?" And he goes, "No," he said, "I really think you'd be good." We signed up, and you do a bunch of training, and it was wonderful. It was wonderful. It's just a time in somebody's life. It's an honor to be with them. I sat with many as they took their last breath on this earth, and it's a powerful moment. Because at that instant, they know something that I don't know. Right. They know something that I believe in.
Yeah. Their awareness is peaked.
Yeah. And so we have wonderful stories of the patients that we connected with and their families. And your bond with the family is very strong. And that, of course, with time passes. But so those years at volunteering at the hospice, then when we retired, we went to work there and we became employees and we got even more involved. The hospice world, those are very special people, the nurses, everybody there is there because they feel just driven to do that kind of work.
Yeah. And it takes a special heart to do that too, doesn't it? And,
golly.
And a compassion.
You would, and I'm an emotional guy. I cry, and you'd sit with these people, and I sat with plenty that just were very frightened. They didn't know the Lord. They had no peace, and several left this world angrily. And while I wasn't there, you're not there to preach the word of God to them. You're there to comfort them and be a support. Yet the subject always came up, regardless of their beliefs. They would, at some point, even the non-believers would say, "Can I ask you a question?" You go, "Yeah, ask me anything." And we would talk. Did I lead anybody to the Lord before they left? I don't know. But I do know that I represented the love of Jesus Christ in their lives.
Yeah. At that moment. Wow.
Yep.
That's beautiful.
Oh, it's powerful.
Yeah.
So
it sounds like your life here in Arkansas in some ways mirrors your life in California in that you're living here on the ranch. Mm-hmm. I want you to talk to me a little bit about raising the animals that you raise and the products that you have.
Sure.
You're still involved in serving people too. So why don't you take us through your life here in Arkansas now?
As life goes on, again, growing up in 4-H, I had some livestock. We'd have a steer for the fair or a lamb. We're talking a couple of things, a few horses, not a big deal. And then as you get to certain points in your life, of course, those were times that I was the happiest. I loved that time in my life. We had a beautiful home in Bentonville. I lived on an acre in a nice subdivision. We've been blessed. We had stuff, and there was a pool and all that. And one day, Mom and I were sitting downstairs. It was a 2-story home, and upstairs were 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a movie room, a bonus room. And I asked Mom, I said, when was the last time you were upstairs? And she goes, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago. And so here you sit with a home, with a second home on top of you that you never look at. She'd go up there to dust or something. And you start to look at your priorities. And it was wonderful. When family came, friends came, plenty of room for people to stay. But that never meant that much to us. And so we started talking about, well, what do we want to do? How do we want to live? And we had always understood that it's not the material possessions that make they make our life maybe more comfortable or more convenient, but that's really all. And those things aren't that important. But so I started a kind of a brainwashing campaign, and I would get the DVDs like Farmageddon and Food Inc. and those things, and make Mom watch them. And it shows how our food is raised, how livestock lives on concrete and this little pens and all this stuff. And it took a couple of movies, and she goes, so our grandkids are eating that, and we can do better than that. Okay, I'm glad to hear you say that, because here's what I've been thinking. So we started looking for 5 acres, and she's a city girl. So if we just had 5 acres, and I'm whined and moaned, just 5 acres, and we looked, and that's not easy to find around here. But ultimately, we were blessed to find 35 acres that we're sitting on today. And now what are we going to do? It's 35 acres of overgrown wild berries and wild rose, and it had some horses on it, and we purchased it. I had a tractor. I was the only guy that lived on an acre that had a tractor in the garage. I wanted a tractor, but there was a plan there, because about a year later we bought this, and I put that tractor to use with a bush hog, and we started clearing 35 acres. We built the shop because we needed a place to operate out of. So we're still living in Bentonville, and that was 9 miles from here, so it wasn't a big deal, but we weren't really here. And then we decided, we had to decide, what are we going to raise? And I didn't want to raise cattle. Everybody raises cattle, and I used to work on my summers in high school on a feedlot in California, so I'm very familiar with them. But they're big, and I'm not, and I'm not as fast as I used to be, and neighbors all have cows, so we thought about smaller livestock. We joined the Livestock Conservancy, and in that organization, they talk a lot about livestock breeds that are threatened or endangered or on their critical list, and we decided we'll raise pigs. So we started with pigs. We started with Large Black Hogs, and that's a breed. It's an old heritage breed. We bought 3 gilts, which is young females, and a boar. We're going to go in, raise some pigs, and we're just going to do that for the family. We have no desire to market it outside friends and family, and so we start. But pretty soon you've got more pigs. We enjoyed the breed. They're very friendly animal. I've only been bit once by one of the sows, and that was my fault. So we get these pigs, and we're not living here, and we had the house on the market, and it ultimately sold, and we came out, and our son Niall owns a big motorhome, and we parked it in the shop, and we lived in the motorhome while we built this house that we're in today. And it took 5 months, which isn't long, because when you have your wife living in a motorhome in the shop in the summer, you spend a lot of time working on the house.
Very motivated.
Oh, I'm very motivated. But she was, she's just a trooper. She makes the best out of everything. And living in the motorhome was a great experience. And we had done it once in California. On my days off at the fire department, I was a general contractor. I built houses, because I don't do well with idle time. We had built a couple of homes for ourselves out there, and had actually lived in a motorhome while we finished one of them. And so we're pros at that. But we lived in the shop, built the house, and we work on the place every day. And then the girls start having babies, pigs, little baby pigs. And for Mrs. Hanna, she had never seen anything born, ever. And all of a sudden, we've got pigs coming. And she has really embraced this whole thing. There have been some challenges for her. Things die. Animals die. Animals get sick, and that is just the way it is when you work with livestock. And so she has toughened up with that. And so we start raising these pigs. One thing led to another, and we met a chef. We met Stephen Brooks, and Chef Stephen Brooks came out, looked at our place, and he said, "Well, have you ever thought about selling this product, outside of it?" And I said, "No, but if you saw my feed bill, I probably should." And so he started introducing us to various chefs here in town. And the culinary scene here in Bentonville, Northwest Arkansas, was really growing. So we really hit it at the right time with regard to pasture raised, farm to table, and all that stuff, pasture to plate. And so we start selling to a couple of the restaurants. Again, we were blessed with these chefs who were very helpful in our pricing. We didn't know. The first chef we ever sold to is at a restaurant, a very high-end restaurant downtown, and we gave him the product and a bill, and he looked at it and he goes, "This is unacceptable." And he goes, "You'll never stay in business. This is way too cheap. I'll give you $1 more for this." And so if you allow people to just guide you.
Participate, yeah.
Yeah, be participants in it. I want you to have my product at a fair price, and they do. And now we've moved into a different breed, into Berkshires.
And the whole thought is to be sustainable, to have a relationship.
It is. These hogs live on pasture. We know them all from the minute they're born. The first thing they feel are my hands. We are heavily involved in the birthing and the farrowing. So our success rate is very high. We don't lose too many pigs at birth. Pretty amazing, just the whole birth thing. We breed these sows, and the babies come 115 days later, almost to the day. And here they come. We get them dried off and get them under a heat lamp. And so it's best case scenario for the pigs. We right now probably have, and I'm going to guess, 75 hogs on the place, but I know every one of them. And most have been born here. It takes 10 months to raise them to market size. We have them processed. Finding customers is easy, but what's hard is the consistency. Menus change in restaurants. They'll do a pork chop special for 2 weeks, then pork's off the menu, and so it winds up in the freezer. We have many individuals come here to the ranch and buy it, and that's fine, and that's sporadic also. We have done a lot. We have actually have a business, and we have a business plan, and it is a woman-owned business. Waltina owns this company, and I am her director of operations, but she's very astute when it comes to dealing with the customers and getting us involved in organizations that can benefit us and we can benefit them. Arkansas Grown through the State Department of Agriculture, we belong to that. We belong to a program called Homegrown by Heroes, which is a veterans farming organization. We belong to the Animal Livestock Conservancy, and we're animal welfare approved. And so through that organization, AWA, Animal Welfare Approval, they come annually and audit our ranch and confirm that we are raising these animals to certain standards, their standards. It helps us with not necessarily marketing, I thought it would, but it's another set of eyes helping me be sure that I am doing right by these animals. And we've had animals in the past, like I said, but this is different. I want them to live their life in a wholesome way, in a way that they were always intended to be raised. Pigs like wallows. Pigs, they eat grass like a cow. People go, "Oh no, pigs don't eat grass." Well, I can post a video if you want. They eat grass just fine. They like grass. We supplement with grain that they have access to all the time. I learned that I use less feed if they have access to it all the time. It would be like you and I living at the Golden Corral. All of a sudden you go, "Well, it's there all the time. I don't need to eat all the time." And so they actually eat less of the commercial feed because seasonally we've got mulberries, wild plums, wild cherries, all the walnuts. You haven't lived till you've heard a pig crunch a black walnut. You think it's going to ruin their teeth. And so they have these natural things that the roots, they're horrible on my pasture. It looks like a war zone out there. They root everything up. But that's really pretty good for my property. In the areas where the hogs are, the invasive weeds are now gone because the hogs have rooted them out. That constant rooting does tend to till the soil. And so I have pretty healthy pastures. They fertilize as they go. So they're not pristine looking, they're very healthy. We've got that. We're constantly learning. We have others in this line of work. We don't view them as competitors. We're all just trying to do the right thing. But we have a good group that we can contact when we need guidance on something.
Yeah.
And everyone's very willing to share. And then we got sheep. That was I was bush hogging acres every year, just keeping it mowed down. And we thought, well, let's get some sheep. So we did. We had a couple of goats at one point that were given to us, and we clearly paid too much. I'm not a goat guy. They're goats. They're ornery. There is a market for them, but they're hard to keep in. Fences are just a suggestion. They're going to go where they want to go. So we got rid of the two goats, went with the sheep. We raised Katahdin sheep, which is a meat sheep, hair sheep. It's not wool, it's hair. And they shed this time of year. They lamb twice a year. And lamb is becoming increasingly popular here. It wasn't originally, locals would go, why would you eat a sheep? But up here, where we have so many people from all over the world, there's a demand. We sell out of lamb products, and we're taking pre-orders now for lamb that we will process in August. And it'll all be sold before it's even processed.
Wow. So that has real potential.
It really does. The advantage to sheep, pros and cons to all of them, but while they are susceptible to parasites, they will always have parasites, but you manage that. We manage it in a natural way by pasture rotation primarily. I don't deworm them. That would be a rare thing. It's just, so again, back to trying to do this all as naturally as possible. We don't use antibiotics on any of the livestock that we process for feed. However, if I had a sow, one of my breeding stock, that needed a shot of penicillin, for whatever reason, I would definitely give it to her. But the livestock that we process for consumption does not get anything like that. There's never a need. They all stay pretty healthy. But the lamb is going well. We'll probably grow the lamb herd, flock. They're easier on me. The pigs are constantly up to something. They're very intelligent. Once they figure something out, especially if it's something you don't want them to do, they're going to do it. And we had 3 gilts, young girls that are now mature sows, and they're at 740 pounds. So they're 750. They're big girls. And we have replacement sows. Right now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, probably got 6 sows and 1 boar. But we're crossing our large blacks with Berkshires to get a little bit different meat profile. We're looking for a little bit better looking pork chop, but staying within that heritage line where we wind up with a pork that's much redder than what we see at the store. At the store, it's kind of an off-white color. This pork is very red, mistaken a lot for beef. When people see it in the freezer, they go, well, is that a steak? It is, but it's from a pig. And so it's very, very flavorful product. Recently, Mrs. Hanna has gotten involved with a new co-op, a food co-op that's starting in Bentonville called the Bentonville Area Co-op, starting up literally next week. Folks want this product, but many people don't have the time to drive out to Hanna Family Ranch here in Highville. So this co-op is going to deal with produce, and the pork for protein, and they'll have beef. But the Bentonville Area Co-op kind of reached out to us, and Waltina took it to task, and we're going to provide them with their pork, and which will help us greatly, because in a co-op environment, in that situation, they simply say, "What do you have a lot of?" And we always have a lot of sausage, a couple of 3 kinds, and we always have pork chops. And so I don't need to process hogs for one specific cut. The restaurants want a certain cut. Well, that leaves me with a lot of hog. And in a co-op setting, you say, these are the things I have a lot of. And so I can offer that at a much more reasonable price point. And the co-op purchases it will purchase it from us in bulk, and then they will in turn sell it to the members of the co-op. So for us, it's simply providing the co-op with our product, and again, telling them what we've got that's available. And they understand that you're not always going to have bacon, maybe, but they want what you've got. Right. So we look forward to that. It'll help us balance out our inventory.
Okay. So we're going to put your website on the show notes. And so if a listener's interested in your product, they could call you or Waltina.
Our website is hannafamilyranch.com.
Okay.
On that is all of our contact information. And like I say, we're in Highville, right next to the children's shelter. That's the segue right there, Tom. The children's shelter.
It is the segue. But you know what's exciting about your product line is it sounds like it's evolving and you're learning. You're moving to the right spot.
We had to. If you're not evolving, you're missing out. People's taste change, policies, practices, livestock raising practices changes. You have to stay up with that. And we were going down the path with our large black hogs, and the pork chop was not appealing in appearance, awesome flavor, didn't look good on the plate. And so that's when we decided, okay, we're not going to be hard-nosed about this. So we started crossing them with our Berkshire boar, and we're changing that meat, that profile of that pork chop, which is kind of the money cut on a hog, is that loin. And so we experiment with other breeds. We've got a couple of Durocs out there that we're experimenting with. So we're not going to be stuck with just one breed. We're not, I think we do ourselves no favor when we do that. There are plenty of good, wholesome heritage breeds out there that we can work with and keep a good product coming.
Okay. All right, so I'm ready for that segue now. So your neighbor is the Northwest Arkansas Children's Shelter. Mm-hmm. So you've gotten to know them very well.
Well, there again, you find this 35 acres and ultimately are able to purchase it and do all these things. And then we realize that across the street, we're on Reuben Road, and across Reuben Road is 100 acres, 90 some acres, that's owned by the Northwest Arkansas Children's Shelter. And so they're our neighbors across the street. We had been volunteering at Crystal Bridges, and we volunteered at Crystal Bridges starting 2 years before the museum was even built. So we were pretty involved, and they taught us about art, and we gave tours and just did the things that volunteers do at Crystal Bridges, in a fantastic place. There was something, however, over the years that I found lacking for me personally. It was wonderful. It's fabulous. We are blessed to have it. But it wasn't as fulfilling for me over time as I wanted. One day we're talking about it, and Mom goes, well, there's a children's shelter across the street. And so we went over, talked to them, and it's close. It's like we were put here for a reason next door to them. And so we attended the classes. There's a lot to learn when you're dealing with children that are in an emergency shelter. They're there through no fault of their own. They're in the system through DHS, the Department of Human Services. And Waltina had retired from the Department of Human Services in California before she went to work for Deloitte Consulting. So she's very familiar with DHS and how it operates. And then the shelter is a place where children can come. They're sent there for roughly 45 days. And I don't know what the average length of stay is right now. And they can stay much longer than that under certain circumstances. But our wards of the court says, for many reasons, the parents have made poor choices in some form or fashion, and the kids can no longer stay at home. And so they are brought to the children's shelter. The goal there, we have many goals, but obviously our main theme there is that we provide a safe haven for them while some things in their lives get sorted out. And I say we've been volunteers there for almost 4 years, I think. And again, being so close, we can spend a lot of time there. And so when we do have free time, it's at the shelter. We went to the training classes and became volunteers. We started out not wanting to really be involved with the children directly. That's some heartbreaking stuff. And if I need my heart broke, I can go out and find a dead pig. I don't need to be with a child whose life is just, topsy-turvy. Waltina started out doing admin work there, which they had never considered. Most people, when they volunteer, they want to volunteer with the children. And on the volunteer application, Waltina drew a box and checked it, and it said admin. And they said, well, we've never had anybody want to volunteer for administrative work. And they said, but we have a lot. And so she started doing administrative work there. I started by repairing bicycles. There are bikes there, a lot. They're always broken because they're kids. And so I started fixing bikes with their facilities manager there. I said, what's your needs? And he said, well, do you mind working on bicycles? And nope, whatever you want to do. So I started fixing bikes. But I will say now, several years down the road, especially me, Mom, not so much, but I get involved with the kids, especially the teenage boys. I don't do much with the girls. They scare me. And so I stick with the boys. And, these boys have had maybe not the best male role models in their lives. And not that I am, but I can certainly give them a different perspective. And ultimately, I went to some more training and got approved through DHS to actually be alone with the kids. A volunteer at the shelter is never alone. There's staff that's always within eyesight of you. And that's a wonderful thing. Sometimes a boy, I have learned, doesn't want to talk too much around staff. And so I talked to DHS and they said, yeah, there's a program. And they did some more background. I've had my background run so many times. I think now wherever it shows up, they go, it's this guy again. What's he up to? So now I can be alone with them. I go get them a boy and bring them over to the ranch. And that started when we first got this whole thing going, and we were volunteering there. Somebody said, hey, next week is our annual farm week, and we know you live nearby. And we live right there. So we started bringing the kids over. Now the kids from the shelter are here weekly. The teachers are looking for something to get them out. The counselors learned that while they can take a child into their little office and set them down and go, tell me what you're feeling, they learn nothing. But if they go for a little walk, I bush hogged a path from the shelter over the hill to our place. And if they go for this little walk and they wind up here and they can pet a lamb, they can booger a pig, they can chase a chicken, the counselors said they just open up. Because we're not inside, we're outside. We're around nature. Yeah, sometimes they go back with a tick or two, but that's good for them as well. So the counselors bring them over, and just 2 at a time, 3 at a time. Somebody that needs to get out of while the shelter is a fantastic place, it's still a shelter. It's still not home, and sometimes they need to get out of there. So they'll go for a walk, or we'll go pick them up. We have a gator and a golf cart, and we'll drive over and load them up and come over here. And so that kind of started us using the ranch as I'll say as a ministry. I'll use that word. Not that, I'm going to hand them a Bible tract when they leave, but they get to see that there are people that actually care about them. The staff at the shelter is the most, they rank right up there with hospice workers. They care about those children. Maury Peterson runs that place, and it's just it's just fantastic. And she is very open to the kids coming here. She wants them to experience things. And so we get them over here. We see them there. We do popcorn every Friday. Right now we're doing snow cones because it's hot. So we build this little relationship with the kids during that time that they're here. We may never see them again. Probably won't, because these kids are not all from Northwest Arkansas. They're from all over the state. To come over, again, spend some time with, and go back with complimentary pig poop on your shoes, and they love it. They really, really enjoy it. It touches us that this gift of 35 acres that we were able to purchase is not about us. That's kind of we read The Purpose-Driven Life by Rick Warren. Mm-hmm. That starts out saying it's not about you. It's not about me. We always knew that. And then you see it articulated and you go, yeah, that's how it is not about us. Our lives are great. Our lives are wonderful. We work hard at it. It's about these children in this case, and how we can set an example for them, how we can show them that our life has not been perfect either, yet here we are chugging along. We take the bad and we deal with it to the best of our ability. We're thankful for those learning experiences, and we're certainly thankful for all the good. So the kids come over, and again, I'll get a boy once in a while. They come over, and then what happens is when I see them at the shelter, because we're there so much, they'll go, "Hey, can I come over?" Well, yeah, now I've got you hooked. Who knows what that'll lead to in their lives. At some point, they may go, "Yeah, I remember that old guy had those pigs when I was up in Bentonville." And so it would be exciting to see. I'll never know while I'm here, but are we planting a seed just like it was planted in me in the 50s when I had a steer for the fair, and now we've got 75 hogs and 60 sheep and chickens, which are basically food for the local red fox that I'm trying to deal with. But so anyway, it's those experiences that come back, hopefully, in their lives. And I know that. I count on that. I count that what we do with them is something that they will remember down the road.
Yeah.
Not every day. I don't want them to think about me a lot.
We so appreciate you sharing your story, and you're a perfect example of how one person's life can have an effect on so many others. And the thing that I just really love about your story is it's not over.
Oh, no.
You have so much in front of you, that you goals and things that you want to do and learn, and you have just become open to life as it comes to you.
And I want to make that open. I want these children especially, or anybody that comes out here. My life has not been perfect. I've made these tremendous mistakes, yet here I am.
Yeah.
And I've learned from them. I've been blessed beyond belief, and I know where that comes from. I know that my Lord and Savior.
Yeah. Well, Will, thank you for spending the time with us.
You're welcome, Tom. I appreciate this very much.
Okay. And thank you for tuning in to Wonderful Life. And remember, the only thing that you can take with you is that which you give away. This is Tom Rohr, the richest man in town, signing off till next time.
This is the Padua Podcast Network. PaduaMedia.com.